Welcome to Capitol Preview, a weekly bipartisan discussion with Iowa legislators about the key issues facing our state. Brought to you by Mediacom.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of Capitol Preview. My name is Bill Peard. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Iowa Cable and Telecommunications Association. Capitol Preview is brought to you by our friends at Mediacom. And this morning's guest is Karin Derry, District 39 from Johnston, Grimes, and Urbandale. She serves in the House of Representatives at the state for the state of Iowa. And Karin, I appreciate you coming in here to visit with us this morning.
Well, thank you for having me.
What are your views? I'm going to get right into the the nitty gritty. What are your views on the changes to the judicial nominating system?
You know, this is one of the things that has been brought up this year that has been particularly concerning to me. And part of it is that I've had experience working with the judges on the Iowa Court of Appeals and the Iowa Supreme Court. Because when I first graduated from law school, I clerked for David Baker, first on the Iowa Court of Appeals, then on the Supreme Court, and had the opportunity to work with our appellate court judges. And they are outstanding individuals and professional. I never saw them apply their political views to court decisions. They did their job, applied the law. So knowing the way that the appellate courts work and how well they work, and knowing that we have such a great reputation throughout the country for our judicial system, for its fairness, its impartiality, coming in and saying we need to change the way that the Judicial Nominating Commission works. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It strikes me as a solution in search of a problem, and frankly, just injecting partisanship into the process, and it's unnecessary. You know, we have things in our state, big problems with, Medicaid and making sure people have, living wage jobs, and here we are working on something that really just doesn't need to be fixed. Right. It's pretty good already, so it's very concerning to me. I am very hopeful that as we wind down the session, that this does not gain any further traction, and that we get to spend our time focusing on what's important instead of fixing a problem that doesn't need fixing.
Very good. So what made you decide to run for office after I ask you a question like that, right? Yeah.
Well, you could probably tell I'm a little passionate about a few
Absolutely.
things.
Yep.
I was a first-time candidate. This is the first time I've been in office. Frankly, never thought I'd run for office. I was, raising my family. My husband and I've lived in Johnston for over 20 years. We've raised 3 kids there. I was going to work and involved and interested, but, caucusing, voting, putting out some yard signs was about the extent of my involvement. Right. And then in 2017, there were some things that were happening in the Iowa legislature that I just plain didn't agree with. Just seemed, a lack of appropriate prioritization. And we talked about the Judicial Nominating Commission process now. In 2017, we implemented the voter ID law. No evidence of widespread voter fraud in the state of Iowa, and yet here we were implementing a voter ID law. It was a solution in search of a problem. And, I just decided, well, I could either complain about things or do something about it, so decided to run.
Very good. So I know we've kind of covered a little bit of your background, but what has been your background or a little bit of behind the scenes? What made Karin tick?
Sure. In my career, I've done some different things. I worked in human resources for about 15 years, primarily for not-for-profits, some in the healthcare arena. And then when I was in my early 40s, I went to law school, which was interesting with 3 kids at home.
Absolutely.
To jump into that. I have a very patient husband. Yeah. So I've got a legal background as well. And, I kind of thought as I was deciding whether or not I should run that background, as well as being a mom, having lived in the community for years, would be particularly, helpful in the legislature. And I've found it to be, being a lawyer helps me. I serve on the Judiciary Committee. I'm on the Human Resources Committee, so my background with not-for-profits and human services and healthcare has been helpful. So I feel as though it's served me well.
Representative, you also serve on the Administration and Regulation Budget Subcommittee. What's that experience been like?
Well, it's very interesting because this is the Budget Subcommittee that looks at all the different departments. And so Department of Inspections and Appeals and the Department of Revenue and that type of thing. And you get an opportunity to learn some things about some of these departments that otherwise, you probably wouldn't know. So it's been very interesting and enlightening in some ways. I'll give you an example on the bill that was passed, the appropriations bill. It included 2 positions for the governor's office at a cost of $200,000. And the only justification for these addition of 2 positions, which is about a 10% increase to that department's budget, was to help meet the governor's goals. And having come from the corporate world and having worked in the not-for-profit arena and having worked in HR over the years, and my parents were small business owners, nothing in my experience prepared me for someone making a request for a 10% increase with really no justification. And I just
stuck
thought,
it in there and hoped that it went.
And it went,
right.
At least it went out of the House.
Right.
And so to me, that's not the way things really work in the real world, and that's concerning to me. Now, perhaps there's a great reason for adding those 2 positions, but
right.
we certainly wouldn't know it based upon the information that, I received as a member of that subcommittee, and that's concerning. I think.
Did you ask for additional information?
I did. We did ask for that information, and what we got was that it was for the governors to help her meet her goals.
Okay.
And then it really wasn't even until we were debating it on the House floor that I found out it was for 2 analysts.
Okay.
Whatever that means. So it's just, that's a different experience for me, and I think taxpayers really deserve to know how their tax dollars are being spent. And
so we talked a little bit, jumping to another subject.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about why you ran, and so what were your top priorities as a candidate, and have they changed since you've gotten in there?
They really haven't changed, and my priorities, I suspected that people would be interested in healthcare and in the economy and jobs and in our public education system. And what I found knocking on thousands of doors and talking with voters throughout the campaign is that's exactly what people were interested. A lot of people had friends and family members or were providers in the Medicaid system, and it had really impacted their lives and the lives of their loved ones, impacted their business. I talked with a lot of providers who were saying, I don't think I'm going to be able to, see Medicaid patients anymore because the system just isn't working any longer. Right. So those, were what I thought would be the priorities, and that's the way it turned out. And they still are, because I think that's just still what's really important to Iowans, is that we make sure our kids have a good education.
Absolutely.
And
we brag about it.
We brag about it. It's on our schoolhouse is on our quarter,
right.
Right.
And
in my district, we've got the Johnson schools, we got Dallas Center Grimes schools, we have Urbandale schools. People move
right.
to my district because
right.
of our good public schools.
Absolutely.
They care about them.
Right.
So.
And they're fierce about it, too.
Yeah, yes, they are.
We hear a lot of problems within the Iowa Medicaid system. What are your thoughts about that?
There is no doubt that it's a complex system and that the problems we have are very complex. What's frustrating to me is that there just doesn't seem to be the will to do anything about the privatization fiasco that we have. People talk about we just need to, go back to a state-run system, or, we need to do this, we need to do that. And I think those are all conversations that we need to have and get serious about having them and have them now. Instead, what I see from the majority party is primarily, Medicaid privatization is here to stay, and just not really an interest in even having a discussion about what we can do to fix it. And that's a shame. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I know that ignoring the problem isn't the right answer. We need to fix it. This is impacting people's lives, and it's just not who we are as Iowans.
Right.
We're better than that.
Yeah. All right. What are your thoughts about getting from one frying pan into the other? What are your thoughts about the Iowa education system?
Like I say, people move to my district for our
Right.
great public schools, and we do have great public schools in my district, world-class educators. All three of my kids have gone through Johnson schools. My youngest is a junior in high school now, and they've all had great experiences. So we are rightfully proud of our public schools. But if we keep underfunding them, we're going to run into issues. And it's already starting to take its toll, especially in some of our rural communities. And again, that's not who we are as Iowans.
Right.
I went to the University of Iowa many years ago, coming from a middle-class family, and I was able to graduate with some student debt, but not crippling student debt.
Right.
And, we want to have the kind of state university system where kids from a middle-class family, kids from all walks of life, can go to our public universities. And we're not providing the funding that we have in the past, and that's too bad. We need to do better around that as well. And as a former HR person, I can say that that's an important recruiting tool to bring people to the state. When you think about recruiting people from either of the coasts, for example, and you can say, if you come to Iowa, your kids can go to a great public school, so you're not going to have to pay for private school tuition, and then guess what? When they graduate from high school, they can go to a world-class university, and the cost is reasonable. That's a huge recruiting tool. So it's
Absolutely
not.
It is. Absolutely it is. We talk about economic development.
Exactly.
That is economic development.
Exactly. So it serves a number of purposes when we prioritize our public schools.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the thing is that we have both people from both coasts come in here because we have a lot of insurance companies
Right.
and financial companies and Pioneer and
Yep.
on and on.
Right.
So they come here and they see we've got a mecca in the living conditions
Yes.
in Iowa, and we got wonderful
Yes.
public schools. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, reasonable cost of living, lots of good
Right.
reasons to come to Iowa.
Yeah. With unemployment at an all-time low, speaking of our economic development, can we say that Iowa's economy is doing well?
Well, I think as we look at what's happening with farmers these days, it's pretty tough to say that the economy is doing well, at least not for them. The fact is they're not making any money. And as ag goes, so goes the state of Iowa, from
Right.
my perspective. So that's a problem. You may be familiar with the United Way study that was done that found that 37% of Iowans are in households that have a working adult who's not earning enough money to cover the basics. That's a problem. We need to make sure that people have living wage jobs, not just a job. So yeah, and it's great that we have historically low unemployment. Of course, that's great, but that's just one indicator, and I want to make sure that Iowa's economy is working for everyone, not just the wealthy.
We got about 30 seconds before this comes to an end,
All
so
right.
I'm just curious what your thoughts are. I think you've done a good job of explaining them,
Yep.
but what your thoughts have been your first year serving.
I continue to be honored to have the opportunity to serve the people of my district. It really is an honor, and I take it very seriously, and people will often say it's a thankless job. I will tell you that a lot of times people do say thank you, and that means a lot.
Very good. All right, our guest has been Representative Karin Derry from District 39, which is Johnston, Grimes, and Urbandale. We appreciate you coming to talk to us this morning. And please stay tuned for another episode of Capitol Preview.